Salam everyone, I'm Zurairi A.R, a new assistant foreign editor with the Straits Times. And I've taken over from Tan Tam Mei, who used to helm this edition. You're listening to Asian Insider. Welcome to another Asian Insider episode where we go across the causeway to explore and discuss Malaysia's current affairs and recent trends on the fourth Friday of alternate months. So joining us from Kuala Lumpur is our Malaysia Bureau Chief, Shannon Teoh, and our special guest, Tony Pua, an ex-member of parliament from DAP and previously a political secretary for former Finance Minister Lim Guan Eng. So, apa khabar? All good?
Banyak baik. Very good.
Very good here. Waiting for it is the calm before the storm next week, which I think we're going to talk about. Yeah.
So, before we talk more about the recent developments in Malaysia, Tony, can you share a bit what you've been up to these days?
Not too much. Gardening, golfing, traveling, painting. Quite good stuff.
Wow, all very, very distressing, yeah? You look so happy also.
Distressing or de-stressing?
De-stressing.
Oh, distressing.
Okay, so in this episode, we will be talking about Budget 2026, recently tabled in the Parliament by Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. We will also talk about the upcoming Asean Summit, which will take place in Kuala Lumpur at the end of October. Datuk Seri Anwar recently tabled the fourth budget of his administration on October 10th, and it was touted as the largest allocation yet, at a whopping 470 billion ringgit. To our listeners in Singapore, that's just over 144 billion Sing dollars, which is roughly the same as Singapore's expansionary budget for 2025. But Shannon, you wrote about this in your article, but maybe you can tell us again, why was that 470 billion ringgit not the whole story?
Well, this is the first time Malaysia's budget includes spending by government institutional funds, stat bodies, and other state-linked firms. Now, Tony, you've worked in the finance ministry before. I'm pretty sure this was never the practice before that. And if you strip away this spending by associated bodies, that's over 50 billion ringgit, right? And over 15 billion Singapore dollars.
50.
Now, yeah. And if you take all that away, the actual money coming from the treasury, which means from taxpayers, right? That's 419 billion ringgit, which is actually less than what was allocated in budget 2025. Of course, in 2025, we are expected to actually spend less than what was budgeted. But still, so I think there's a sense here that the Prime Minister didn't want to go out there and have announce a budget that was slightly smaller, right? So to me, this is a bit of shifting the goalposts to make it look more expansionary than it actually is. So it's a bit like, if you ask me, it's like if a guy is walking down the street, and then you get bugged by some UNICEF people or whatever, they're asking you for donations. And then you say, oh, no, I already donate. But actually it's your son or daughter or nephew that's donating, right? It's kind of in a similar vein. It's related party, but it's not you.
Tony, as Shannon said, you've been involved in budgets before. So is this a creative fiscal solution?
I honestly think that the question or the dealing with whether it's 417 or 470 billion is making a bigger deal out of what it actually is. It's not true that it's the only time where stat board spending are actually so-called somewhat lumped together in a budget speech. I would say lumped together in the budget speech because they are not present anywhere else in the formal budget documents. We have MRT expenditure before, we have Pan-Malaysian, Pan-Borneo Expressway, we have plenty of other expenditure that was actually within previous budget speech by all previous prime ministers, whether it's Tun Dr. Mahathir, Najib, or even Pak La, just that nobody actually added up those figures together to get a new figure. So I honestly don't think it's such a big deal. It's quite normal practice for budget speeches to actually incorporate certain relevant government agency spending as part of the government-related program. I don't think it's a big deal. As to whether it is actually bigger than the previous year, I actually don't think that's important either. What is important is more how the money is spent than the absolute sum that's actually spent. A difference of 3 billion, 5 billion, or even 10 billion actually don't make that much difference to actual government impact on the economy. What actually makes a difference is the efficiency of the spend of what has been allocated.
Okay, good insight. Now let's talk about how, despite pledging to retarget the raw 95 fuel subsidies to exclude the top 15% richest in Malaysia, right? Mr. Anwar seems to have walked back on that pledge. So, Tony, from your experience in Parliament, what does it tell us about the political realities of implementing fiscal reforms? And do you think this reflect on his administration's appetite for reforms?
No, I mean, there are two ways to look at it. He, as you said, did walk back on his favorite phrase of Mahakayas.
Mahakaya, yes.
But I actually took the policy announcement and implementation as a very, very positive move. You must remember that fuel subsidy reforms is probably the single toughest reform that needs to be implemented in Malaysia that has failed to be implemented over the past 20 years. Pala tried in the 2000s, he failed miserably, he got kicked out. Najib tried, he failed, he got kicked out. In Mahathir's time, we wanted to try, but we got kicked out before we could implement. And for Anwar to actually put it into place and with a little bit of ingenuity in it to put in place a framework without pissing off anyone, I thought it's really good. What happens now is that we will cut off all the excesses that happens through smuggling, through illegal stealing, through unauthorized usage of this fuel, because everyone has a cap. And to be honest, most people will never spend beyond that cap. So I thought it's really, really good.
Yeah, I'm not sure if nobody was pissed off. Yeah.
I think it's a positive reform anyway. Whatever he said before, I think it's just that with this prime minister, there's a tendency to sometimes overpromise on
which politician don't.
Yeah. I mean, even if they, including yourself, right, Tony? But the thing is that I think that it sets a certain market expectation lah for what.
No, I think the market knows politics and actual implementation, and the market actually seeks positive steps forward. They understand rhetoric, and no one has. I mean, Anwar's rhetoric is small compared to many other world leaders out there today, and many people want to see the actual positive reforms. The rhetoric aside. So sure, I believe that the market is understanding of that fact.
Tony, do you think that in years, whether next year or after the next general election, we already have this, now that we have the mechanism in place, that he might, or future governments might start thinking, okay, well, now we can start maybe excluding the top 5%, top 10%.
It's actually
this
not
kind of gradual
difficult
stuff, right?
Yeah, with the framework in place, it becomes very easy to fine-tune, and many ways of doing it. Number one, easiest way, reduce the quota from 300 liters to 250 liters. I mean, how many people use 250 liters a month? Not many. After that, you can exclude certain types of cars. People who drive new Porsches, BMWs, Mercedes gets excluded from the process. Or people who own these cars gets excluded from the process. So once the framework is ready, it's very easy for subsequent governments, whether it's Anwar or anyone else, to tweak the policy to adjust how much subsidy you actually want to provide to the people out there. So I really am very happy with this framework being put in place and implemented smoothly so far in the past 1 month.
We're also seeing a number of allocations for Sabah and Sarawak. Now, Shannon and Tony, there will always be claimed that this was a political strategy for the Sabah state election coming in November. But do you see this as a step forward, a positive step for the federal government on addressing the needs of East Malaysia, for example?
I will take those numbers with a little bit of a pinch of salt. It's not difficult to present numbers that look slightly bigger. It's not cheating, but it's presentation. But regardless, it's actually not wrong to spend more in Sabah and Sarawak from a practical economic perspective because those areas are the least developed, and spending and investing in the least developed areas are likely to generate the biggest economic returns. So it is proper for that spending to take place. I actually think that beyond spending, more what do you call it, more incentives as well as bureaucratic reforms needs to take place within these states to ensure that the money gets spent effectively and to ensure that the economic returns are maximized in these states.
I think technically the answer is yes, lah, right? A lot of the allocation is to address, now you said like the needs there. And they're very basic things, right? You see the item lines there, roads, electricity, water, a lot of things that we take for granted elsewhere, not just Singapore, in Peninsular Malaysia, right? So it is much needed, lah. I think to just cut my story short is that I recently wrote about Sabah's very woeful power grid, how it's been problematic for decades, and I'm so invested in that story now that when Anwar announced the Southern Link transmission project, I was the one jumping for joy and texting my friends over there in the Sabah Energy Commission and all these guys say, "Hey, you're finally getting this right after decades and decades," which is, it's not a silver bullet lah, but it's something that is really been missing from the grid.
I think the most challenging aspect of that particular policy in Sabah is a known problem, and the biggest problem, in my view, is actually the state administration. So you can allocate as much as you want to it, but if the state administration doesn't get its act together, then you will have problems getting the electricity you want to all parts of Sabah anyway.
Well, another exciting thing to look out for in the horizon is the Asean Summit. Although maybe not because of Malaysia's chairmanship of ASEAN. Well, US President Donald Trump is coming to town, right? I mean, Shannon, you will be covering that. There have been protests even against Mr. Anwar for inviting Mr. Trump. But Tony, do you think, how significant will Trump's visit to Kuala Lumpur be? I mean, like in terms of Malaysia's trade and tariff negotiations, can Malaysia even afford not having him in KL for the summit?
We can afford not having him coming if he declines the invitation.
Okay.
We cannot afford to put it very crudely, to piss him off. As much as I personally think he is I probably can't add this word online, but we have no choice because it is the biggest superpower in the world, and he is on a rampage. And if you get on his wrong page, you don't want to end up with the wrong end of the stick, where our tariffs become significantly higher than our neighbors or our competitors. So that's the number one priority for our economy as at this point in time. Yep, put whatever tariffs you want on Malaysia, but what is most important is our tariff rates are not higher than that of our neighbors and peers. So that's to me the most important criteria. We can't change US politics. All we can do is accept the fact that Trump is going to be US president for the next 4.5 years, and we play along until such time a new president gets elected.
And he sounds quite excited to come to Kuala Lumpur as well. There's a peacemaking deal coming that we are trying to arrange. And ASEAN, so ASEAN has so far kept its response to Washington, all these reciprocal trade moves, quite neutrally and without much hostility. Shannon and Tony, do you think this is sustainable? That especially for Malaysia, do you foresee a situation where Malaysia would have or may have to pick a side in this geopolitical rift? Shannon?
Well, I actually don't know because the ducks are not lined up yet, right? You have to see there's a lot of tension now between the US and China. It's kicking up over the past few weeks. And you have to see how that plays out. But if you take a snapshot of right now, October 2025, then I think my answer is no. We don't have to pick a side. We are making hay while the sun shines with China right now on trade, tourism. A lot of tourists not going to Thailand anymore because they're afraid of being kidnapped. They're coming over here. And even with the US, with the tariffs, I think Tony already touched on this. It's not ideal having tariffs, but it's not a total deal breaker for Malaysia. On some sectors, we do have a comparative advantage, like gloves, right? Some of our competitors have higher tariffs. Semiconductors effectively is still zero because they haven't decided. Now, and of course, E&E makes the bulk of our exports to America. So there's many milestones you have to get across before you actually have to kind of make a decision if we do need to get on a diversion course and pick sides and so on and so forth. But they're supposed to sign a trade deal when Trump is here for ASEAN, and if we can secure a good deal on semiconductors, I think then no need to choose sides. You just go move forward with what we have.
Yeah, but
I
I
think
don't think the
one credit you will have to give Datuk Sri Anwar is the fact that he is a natural in placating global leaders. He goes to China, he sings Chinese phrases, he will go to US, he will sing the right phrases for Trump and the US. And as a small nation, you pretty much have no choice but to demonstrate that you will play ball without overstepping and without being seen as too partial towards one over another.
Shannon, we've seen quite a heated protest in the streets of KL. And I think for those who do not quite understand how Malaysians feel about the Palestinian issue, they might be questioning all this because it has spread no longer just in front of embassies, but also, like previously we said again, Mr. Anwar, in public shops. So perhaps you can explain a bit why about this sentiment among Malaysians.
Well, it's always been there, right? I mean, Malaysia has had a very long-held stance of being pro-Palestine in this issue. So, but we've never protested the way we have. I think October 7 really changed a lot of things, and it's kind of like the conflict of this era, right? Which is you will see more stuff on social media than you will see in mainstream media. I don't think this has been the case with the previous conflicts, and so that's really kind of undercut so-called Western media narratives and that kind of stuff. But then I think with the conflict has raged on, and I personally don't like using the word conflict, so we can just use the term the UN used, which was genocide, right? And I think it's really solidified into something that is, somehow become very core to Malaysian identity, right? It's everywhere now, right? And it's actually been quite easy to find lightning rods for it, right? Whenever you want to protest and want to act on something, you need a target lah, right? So protesting in front of US embassy was how it used to be. But then now we have, because there's no Israeli embassy in Malaysia lah, but now we can boycott Starbucks, we can boycott McDonald's. You have these symbols, right? So what bigger symbol is there than Donald Trump coming to Malaysia, right? And I think that's why you've started to see the protests gaining steam. We used to see the protests in the hundreds, or even like one lone person standing in front of the US embassy, very brave individuals like that. But now the heat is turning up because the big man himself is going to be here, right? But I think that I think the government, I think Anwar still has a chance to turn this into a kind of a net positive on this front. You put aside all the economic geopolitical stuff, just on this front on Gaza and Trump being here, is whether he can get something concrete out of whatever bilateral or ASEAN US kind of talks that they're going to have. Can he get some kind of assurance for the future of Palestinian people beyond what was in the Cairo talks, or even for future aid missions? Malaysians felt very close to the flotilla issue, and things like that. If can just get something, I think then the entire visit is justifiable, even on the point of Gaza, right? Even on the point which people are mainly protesting on.
I think a slightly nuanced difference with what Shannon mentioned. I actually don't think anything on Gaza will actually take place during the ASEAN Summit. That means there'll be no step forwards or backwards decided on Gaza when he's here. But I do think that Anwar has sufficient political capital on this point to have Trump here to entertain the protest that's going to be out there and yet come out standing tall, because Anwar has over the past 30 years stood very firmly both in rhetoric and in action while he is in government, to support the Palestinian cause. So that will stick with him. So he has sufficient political capital to have Trump come over and treat it as this is a chance for us to engage him. I actually don't think there'll be any practical positive result or outcome specifically on Gaza from this trip, but I think that wouldn't matter for Anwar.
Okay, we ended on the slightly somber note, but now let's move to our news nugget segment where we share some of our more offbeat stories. Most recently in Singapore, F1, right? Petronas president and group CEO was forced to apologize for being so excited at the podium, where he was recorded celebrating in the middle of a champagne spray. So Shannon and Tony, let's say if one day KL gets to host F1 again and you are the celebrity invited to join in the celebration, but because we have to keep this Sharia compliant, right? Champagne off the table. How would you celebrate an F1 win? Is there something else that you would spray instead?
Champagne stays on the table, but someone else go up on stage to shake it.
Okay.
Okay, find the most senior non-Muslim in Petronas to go up on stage on behalf of the CEO to shake that bottle. I think that was a sensitive issue. I don't think anyone complains about the fact that in the past, even in Sepang, champagne was used to celebrate the winner, right? What didn't happen was for a Muslim to go up on stage to shake that bottle. I think that was the trigger for the controversy. It is not a nice trigger. It shouldn't happen. He didn't drink the champagne. He just took part in the celebration. But being sensitive the way we are in our society, we have to take care of everyone's sentiments. I think the right thing to do is for Petronas next time to send a non-Muslim up there.
Yeah, Tony, very serious. Shannon, what you want to spray?
Well, I mean, to start on a serious note, I think it wouldn't have even registered on the radar if not for the indiscretions at the tourism ministry event, right? I think that put the issue into focus. But if in a hypothetical situation we were to say, oh, no champagne, I mean, I assume it also means that no any alcohol. If not, I would pick toddy because you can be quite fizzy. It is a local product and it will help promote our coconut industry. But if we can't use alcohol, then I would say that we should use Spritzer sparkling mineral water.
Product placement.
Have you seen those in the market? I love it, right? It's not as expensive as all those crazy brands, your Pellegrino and all this kind of stuff. It's like 2 ringgit something per bottle. It's refreshing. It's got a bit of citrus flavor.
They got ad space here.
I don't know, but we should ask them, right? But, you spray on people.
I can bring out the bottles from my fridge.
You have. I have one in my fridge also, but
yeah.
I have more than one. But you don't have to worry about getting sticky, and all this, with any kind of sugary drink. So
no calories.
Also, I think in Tony's time, you wanted to do a sugar tax. Did you guys manage to do the sugar tax?
Of course we did.
Yes, you did, right? So no sugar tax on this one. This one got no sugar. So you see, it's a good product. It's healthy, and again, local product from one of Taiping's proudest exports.
Okay, thanks, Shannon. And that's all we have for you from across the causeway this week. Thanks, Shannon, and also our special guest, Tony, for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. Good to see you again, Tony. Catch up soon.
You've been listening to Asian Insider, and I'm Zurairi A.R. We have links to the articles we mentioned throughout in our podcast show notes, and you can check them out too. And if you like what you heard, please share this podcast with your friends and family. This episode was produced and edited by Faiza Sani. Terima kasih for listening. Bye.